I had felt that the 2014 elections were going to be historic and may well signal a turning point in Indian political history. That is why I agreed to contest those elections. I felt that there had to be an alternative to the BJP's brand of religious majoritarianism. I could see that the Indian National Congress was collapsing, and I felt that a coming together of regional parties could offer a new vision of federal unity, which in the longer term would provide the basis for a stronger Indian union. As for the 2016 elections, the results have further underlined the continuing decline of the Indian National Congress, the grand old party of the past. Now, the results certainly in West Bengal and Tamil Nadu point to the increased relevance of regional parties. Here in Assam, of course, the BJP has won an unprecedented victory, but only after coming to an accommodation with various regional and local political players. So I think in the future it will be extremely important for various regional parties to work out a coherent federal program. These parties should not only be mired in their local and regional concerns, but develop a national perspective and also take an intelligent interest in international affairs. Many of the states, particularly in the east and northeast, have international borders, and the future of our relations with the rest of Asia will depend very much on what the various political parties in the east and northeast do in the foreseeable future. I would prefer to call it a federal front rather than a third front. That's partly because the third front has failed so many times in the past. I think the regional parties now should draw on the best in the history of our own political thought in order to offer a new vision of a free and flexible federal union of India, one that gives equal respect to all religious communities, all linguistic groups, our tribal peoples, and so forth. I think that will provide the basis for a better future for India than imposing unity from above by those who only believe in religiously based majoritarianism. It is certainly a concern. However, I would also like to point out that in the smaller states of the Northeast, there is often a tendency on the part of small local or regional parties there to drift towards whichever party happens to be in power at the center. So that I think is less of a concern. But the BJP victory in Assam must be seen as a very significant political development. After all, Assam is the state with the second largest proportion of a Muslim population after Jammu and Kashmir. And therefore, I think it is extremely important to protect the equal citizenship rights of the minorities here. So I think the real concern is about religious polarization, which will lead to another very unfortunate divide in a state and in a region of the Northeast, which already has many other differences. Now, differences can always be accommodated through the articulation and implementation of a generous policy. So I'm not concerned about differences, but differences must not allow to be turned into divisions which lead to conflict. So I think that again we have to try and develop a kind of politics in the Northeast which is respectful of cultural differences and are then able to transcend them to create broader unity. We need a generous and imaginative foreign policy towards our neighbors. One, I think, important achievement has been the passage of the Indo-Bangladesh Land Boundary Agreement, on which I worked as a member of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs. We were able to balance the national interest with the state's interest, as well as the human interest of people who lived in those enclaves that were exchanged. As a historian, I have written about the migration from eastern Bengal during colonial times. The migration of Bengali Muslim peasants from East Bengal districts to Assam and the Brahmaputra Valley goes back to the beginning of the 20th century. It is not a post-independence phenomenon or a post-1971 phenomenon. Therefore, there have been many migrants who have been here for a very long time, since before partition and independence, and they ought to have the full rights of citizens. Also, when we think about the rise of Asia in the 21st century, we talk mainly about China and India. And of course, these two huge countries must work towards peacefully managing their simultaneous rise. But there are two smaller countries whose future will determine the kind of Asia we see. And these two countries are Bangladesh and Myanmar. And there are some positive signs from both countries. Bangladesh, in terms of social development, has done better than, let us say, West Bengal. Think about girls' education, access to schools, and so forth. So I think we need to have trade and investment flows across the borders. Myanmar has just had an election in a transition to democracy, and we ought to certainly nurture good relations with both of these countries, and also make sure that we don't make a fetish about borders. Borders, of course, have to be respected, but they also have to be crossed by legal citizens wanting to carry out cultural flows across borders must be encouraged. I think that the younger generation must focus on Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose's life and achievements. There is so much to learn from his book of life. They should not be distracted by a meaningless controversy about his mortal end. All of the relevant writings and speeches, all of the papers and files relating to Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose's life were collected and preserved by my father, Dr. Shishir Kumar Bose, at the Netaji Research Bureau in Kolkata. All files that are kept in government custody ought to be thrown open. I did not expect anything of great significance to emerge from the files that have now available. They should of course be open, but the more relevant materials were collected long before, and those are the materials that young people should focus on and take inspiration from Netaji's life of service and sacrifice. My primary identity is that of a historian and a scholar, and I'm simply trying to help out in the political domain at a very critical moment in our country's political history. To the young people of the Northeast, I would say that be very proud of your own cultural traditions, but also look outward and see how your region can contribute to the larger history of India, Asia, and indeed the whole world.